Hi everyone. This tool, which I call the whistle tool, is a very important tool in my toolbox when it comes to making whistling vessels. It's made out of a bamboo chopstick that you use a sharp knife to whittle down to the thickness that you desire. Chopsticks already have this slant in them, so you can start from there. You whittle it down up to a certain thickness, and then we sand it down with sandpaper, as you'll see later. The idea is you want something quite thin that is used to create the air channel through the mouthpiece of your whistle. So if it's too thick, then too much air will travel through. If it's too thin, well, it's unlikely that it will be too thin. And you can always wiggle it just a little bit in the clay, and then it opens up. It's more of a disadvantage if it's too thick. So then you start whittling it down. These bamboo chopsticks are a little tough, but that rigidity also helps when using it as a tool. Because if the clay is wet, the chopstick might get a little moist, but it doesn't really change. It doesn't get any weaker. If you use, for instance, a popsicle stick, then that wood is much softer, and with time will start disintegrating or breaking off, or especially with wet clay, it gets too soft. And I find that these bamboo made tools are best. In fact, once you have them cut down to the shape that you desire, you throw them into a pan with some cooking oil until they brown, and they become even less absorbent and will last a much longer time. So the first step is to whittle it down. Be careful with your fingers. You can use both sides of the chopstick. In fact, you can cut the chopstick in half, and then you have 4 tools. 2 sticks, and each edge has its own thickness or length. So here it's getting a little thinner. It's definitely not perfect. You can also sand it down with a sanding machine, like a belt sander. But it's not necessary. You don't need heavy equipment to do this kind of thing. Just a knife, some sanding paper, and you're good to go. So just to get an idea, I'm looking at the length of the thin part of the tool, and I'm trying to mimic that. If I want a smaller whistle, and a much smaller whistle, which is possible, it would be a very high whistle, then the thickness of this tool would be different. There are no exact measurements though. It's really it's a lot of trial and error. You'll find that if you make a few of these tools, you'll have a preferred 1 or 2 that just seems to work better, or that's a bit longer or a bit thinner. And yeah, so it's just about exploring what works best for what you want to do and the sound that you want to achieve. If you want to achieve a lower sound, you would have to create a larger whistle. And so the air channel and the hole that's cut into the hollow part of the whistle would have to be a bit wider. And in that case, you might actually need a different piece of wood, not the chopstick. You would want something a bit wider. So this is 100 grit sandpaper. I start sanding down the narrowest section that I just whittled down. This is easier to do on the edge of the table, but because it doesn't really show on camera, I decided not to do it, but normally it's easier to sand that way. You want it to taper down if possible, but it can also just be a really thin section, about just a flat, thin section. Tapering down is nice because it helps compress the air a little bit as the air enters the whistle, but it's not vital. So here I'm looking at the length of the thin part. I want to always make sure that it's long enough so that if my mouthpiece to my whistle is a bit long as well, it'll fit through that and reach the body of the whistle. If it's too short, then it's actually not very useful for making whistles. And that's pretty much it. That's how you make the whistle tool, which is also a versatile tool in doing other things with clay.